Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to be discussing a story that I had learned the other day. It was from Mrs. Bailey as she was talking about how her sister tragically died at the age of 23. Today I have with me Troy Cross. Troy, say hi.
Hi.
Troy has never heard this story before, and most people haven't. So we're just going to take a quick look at it and as I'm telling the story, Troy, feel free to ask questions or ask for clarification or anything that you're uncertain about.
Cool.
So to give you kind of some background, general knowledge, um, Miss Bailey, her sister was epileptic. So because of this, she had already been raised in emergency situations before, and her job was to normally, when her sister would have any epileptic issues, was to run in the street and flag down like the ambulance when it were to come. So she's very used to this sort of situation happening. So she's pretty much like taking care of her sister most of the time. And this situation ended up becoming like something normal, something that she's pretty much used to. Um, so it was kind of it was something that obviously since she had dealt with it before and she always had the idea of it being a possibility in the back of her mind, uh, it obviously wouldn't have shocked her as
Oh,
much
okay, yeah.
as much as someone else would. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, so I can like kind of sort of set the scene a little bit. So this particular day, her Miss Bailey's grandma was actually in the hospital. Um,
Okay.
so her grandma was in the hospital, and so they decided to go visit. And so Miss Bailey, right at the time, um, was going to go visit. Obviously, her mom in the hospital, and or sorry, her grandma in the hospital, and her mom actually at the time was going to go run like some errands with her sister once they got back. So they decided to go head over to the hospital. And actually, this is one of the many few times that the sister actually was not with their mom because since she was epileptic, she
Okay.
she couldn't drive. You know, she couldn't she
Oh,
she
yeah,
couldn't really
that.
be out by herself. Like it was a very very serious epileptic
Oh,
thing where it could
dang,
like
yeah.
happen at any moment, right? Um,
Okay.
right. So they actually ended up going to visit her grandma, and again, this is one of the first times that like her sister wasn't necessarily with her and her mom, and by the time that they got back, she was still asleep in their bed. So her mom actually went to actually wake up her sister, and her mom like ended up leaving the room and was getting ready to head out, and Miss Bailey actually never heard her sister get out of her room. So, she never
Oh,
actually
crap.
heard right her get out of the room, and so Miss Bailey actually went in to check on her in her room, and when Miss Bailey actually like put her hand on her, like try to feel everything, she was cold.
Oh, oh, man.
So she was completely cold in her bed, and Miss Bailey, when this had first happened, had somewhat of an idea of what had happened. Right? She uh,
Damn.
she kind of had an idea of what happened, and obviously when her mom ended up like coming over and seeing what happened, obviously it's her mom. She's going to be relatively hysterical, and so
Yeah.
when they went to actually go call the ambulance, her job was when they first got there was to actually get her mom out of the room, right? Because Miss
Oh,
Bailey, Miss
yeah.
Miss Bailey was like abruptly she was sad, she was distraught, but she her brain was instinctively made to in situations like this, get people who are hysterical out of the
Yeah.
room, get stuff done, right? And then reminisce on
Yeah,
it
that,
later.
yeah.
So in the first moment of when it happened, her emotion was very lagging. So
Oh,
at the
yeah, you would
time of
only think
this,
so, yeah.
exactly, yeah. So at the time of this actually happening, she wasn't filled with emotion. She was able to keep it right contained, and she was able to help everything out. So when the paramedics actually got there, she got her mom out of the room. She sent her outside, and her next job was then to go call her dad and her brother and inform them
Oh,
about like what happened. Um, and what's actually interesting is, so after the ambulance, like obviously the ambulance people came out, and they actually told her, they were like, we can't take her anywhere, um, because because they they only take alive people. Ambulances don't grab
Oh
dead
yeah,
people,
yeah.
right?
They wouldn't have a reason to at that point. Yeah.
Exactly. So, so what they actually offered to do was that, if I remember correctly, they actually offered to call the coroner, right, and get everything set up for
Oh,
them,
oh,
which was super nice. And
yeah.
so,
That's nice.
so what was actually interesting was when, when Miss Bailey was like telling different people, right? She actually was going out and telling different family members, obviously, because another little tidbit of information was actually really interesting is, since her sister would spend most of her time in her room since she couldn't necessarily go out and do things by herself, she was always on the phone talking with people. So she would call
Oh,
up,
that's a nice pastime.
exactly, she would call up and talk to family members, talk to friends. That's how she like involved with people. So obviously she isn't going to be able to like get this information out as fast. They would have to like wait till they called and then they would give them the news. So it
Yeah.
was up to Miss Bailey to call and tell
Oh,
people the news.
that's gotta be a hard job to do in general,
I,
especially after going through all of that.
I mean, yeah, hearing her describe it was extremely interesting. As
Oh, I can only imagine.
well, yeah, because like if she's growing up in a situation like that and she's able to keep her composure that well, like I have only the like most amount of respect for her.
Yeah, that's a crazy amount of self-control
Oh, for
through
sure.
all of that.
Yeah. Especially because, like, honestly, I know me in that scenario, I would be able to have some self control, but even I wouldn't be able to keep her composure as well as she did. And so, and like, I do want to make this like a huge disclaimer. Of course, she 100% cares. She just doesn't, obviously.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think at that point you're just like so much either in shock, like there's two types of people, right? There's the people who just become so engulfed in that shock that they're completely immobile and they can't do anything. And then there's the people who just detach from their emotions and become purely like, all right, what's the next thing we have to do? What do we have to get done
Well, yeah.
to help
And
the process?
yeah. And honestly, having people like that, especially in one of these scenarios, is extremely important,
Oh, yeah.
right? It's super important because you obviously, most people are super duper in shock. Most people are having an extremely hard time, like
Oh, I would
obviously
have been, yeah, I would
wrapping
have been just
around.
like screwed. I would have been stuck there. I wouldn't really know what to do in that scenario.
Oh yeah, and like obviously a lot of people are in that exact same position as you, right? They wouldn't actually know what to do in that scenario. So after obviously she was calling different people and letting them know what happened. What was actually interesting enough is one of those people that she called then told the nearby pastures. And something that was like kind of funny, she
Oh,
said, is
okay.
apparently all four of them at the exact same time stopped what they were doing and sprinted to the house. Like they were jogging and like running.
Wow.
which is which is kind of funny, like getting that picture in your head, but also you have to
Yeah,
realize
well,
like,
it's
well, my thing's like, do you not have a car? I
yeah,
mean,
like when like time-ish, when was this?
um, not too
Like
long ago,
year
actually.
what?
I mean,
Oh,
I
oh
mean,
well, freaking cars
considering,
have been used since I don't know how long,
I would say
so
probably early 2000s,
yeah. Oh, well,
if
yeah,
not
then
like, yeah, honestly, definitely like early 2000s. So this isn't like it's happening in like the early 1900s. Like the cars are
yeah, yeah.
widely used, like which is like obviously the interesting part.
Yeah, that's weird.
Um, yeah, I mean, it happens. Um, so yeah, so all the pastors run to their house and they come because like obviously they're doing their best they can, and uh obviously what their job and what's actually perfect for Miss Bailey is, obviously the pastors, right, their intuition is to talk to the person, right, get their mind off of what's happening, which
Yeah.
was really good for Miss Bailey's mom, less for her.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so
I guess.
obviously she doesn't want to, like, she just wants to like get stuff done. She'll like take her own time to reminisce and stuff. She doesn't really want to talk with them right now. She's wants to like keep to herself. But her mom, it was perfect because it was getting her mind off of what is happening. It was like a nice little distraction for her.
Yeah, that's cool that you can like take care of the people who are really in that emotional shock stage. And of course, it's good like if you're going through emotional trauma to take some time for yourself,
Right.
especially if you're someone who deals better coping individually than with a group.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Miss Bailey even told me herself, like, when they went up to her to try and talk to her, she like was like, "Hey, don't talk to me. Like, talk to my mom. She's like the one that needs this."
That's cool. That's pretty cool. That's also just a level of like, you're prioritizing others over yourself.
I mean, of
Uh,
course. Yeah.
Especially when you know when like those others are really going through it. I think that's pretty cool. That's some humanity right there.
Oh yeah, I have nothing but the utmost respect for her. So after obviously they're distracting her mom, it actually gave her enough downtime to where Miss Bailey actually ended up going out front and like sitting down on the walkway, um, and like thinking about herself. And while the pastors are giving comfort to her mom and talking with her and stuff, she's actually able to sit there and reminisce. And it was actually interesting. Miss Bailey was telling us that uh, for her, so like personally for her, she has to have silence. Not necessarily in just like
Okay.
scenarios like this, but in general.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Like in a day to day basis, she has to have at least some point where it's just silence. Because like I mean immediately, like obviously it's very like crazy, right? It's like stuff that happens in the day. And so her way
Yeah.
of like getting through it, because obviously I'm more of a people person, so it's different for me, but for her personally, she likes to just have like silence.
Yeah, everybody's like that,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
everybody has a different style of how they like to um how do they like to use their time and make sure they're doing all right and stuff. So I think that's a really good way to like you it's good that you find your way to cope, to make sure you get yourself in a great mental space.
Oh, for
Um
sure. Yeah.
and find out what's like individual for you because everyone, like I said, everyone's different. So it's not going to be the same solution for every single person.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So after this happened, her dad actually, interestingly enough, because her dad and her brother had made it to the house by this point, her dad was like watching her as she was like in silence, taking it in. I think that's in a similar way. He's also able to cope based off of like the silence and like watching her do
Yeah.
that. Um, so so yes, it was interesting. But what was kind of like one of the weirdest things that actually happened was that as she told us months later, right? Like months later, she didn't like realize this at the time, but like she figured out that months later that this happened, her uncle was like very mad at her. And she was like immediately she was kind of confused. And the reason why is because when she was like going through and telling people that this happened and stuff, like she's telling people, she's doing her job. It's something that
Yeah,
people need to
just getting the
know.
information out.
Yeah, and she actually told, like when she told her aunt the news, her aunt was actually alone. And so her aunt had some like underlying health conditions, and so apparently
Oh
the
no.
uncle was very mad because her being in shock of the fact that her sister was dead could have put the aunt in shock and had other
Yeah,
like
that I can
underlining issues.
understand. That's kind of like that's something that's um I mean that's not something you generally think of. That's not her fault
Well, no,
or
no, yeah,
anything.
exactly. That was my like when she was telling me this, that was my same reaction. I was like, I get why he's upset, but
I get why that,
I
but
don't think he's allowed to
I
necessarily
don't,
be
yeah, he
upset with
doesn't
you when you're
necessarily
just
have
doing.
the luxury to be upset in that scenario.
I mean,
I
yeah,
mean,
like
especially like someone just saw their close family member pass away. They're the one who found it. Like you don't get the choice for you to be more sad. Like you can
exactly.
take it how you want to do it yourself, but you don't blame someone who is just doing their honestly, like more not even civic, more like a family duty in order to make sure that like people in their family got the information.
Oh
Because I
yeah,
mean,
oh yeah,
there are a lot
exactly.
of people out there who just don't care so much. They just don't tell
Oh yeah,
family members when other ones pass away, and that's unfortunate. I
oh,
think it's really
hundred
cool that in
percent.
this scenario that she went out to like try to reach out and make sure everyone knew as quick as she could get people to know.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely like I definitely don't think it was fair for them
Yeah,
to
definitely.
be upset in that scenario. But I will say so. Um, it honestly a lot of people have different reactions when stuff like this happens, and a lot of people the first thing that they think about is completely two different things. So when she actually called the coroner, right? The coroner called her to ask her about the situation and talk to her. And Miss Bailey like answered all the questions that the coroner had to ask. She was very like compliant, obviously. And what was kind of like rude and almost like a weird thing is the coroner said she, in quotes, seemed to be doing fine.
Uh,
She was like, oh, you seem to be
he's
doing
a
fine.
he's a coroner, right? I don't think he has that knowledge to like tell when I guess maybe through experience of seeing people who were I don't know, that seems janky.
Well, no, it was just like like everybody reacts differently. So the fact that like he would say something that's like offensive and like accusatory, right? Saying like, "Oh, you
Yeah,
seem
that
to be doing
is.
fine." Like just because somebody doesn't show like super amount of emotion when they're on the phone talking to you doesn't mean that they're not experiencing that emotion in other ways. Like she
Yeah.
100% was sad, she was distraught, she was feeling this emotion, but she was able to repress it to get stuff done, and then she would allow it to happen later.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Like I haven't really you don't often see people who are very accusatory, especially when someone's gone through great trauma and they know it. Like I get maybe for
Also,
the
like,
corner they're
you're a coroner.
desensitized for that.
Well, no,
Yeah,
but
I get
also
like
like you're a coroner and you're really
you're
gonna say something who just lost their sister. You're really gonna say that to somebody,
yeah,
like,
right. Like as a corner, I get you might be personally desensitized to all of that, but that's personally like these people are going through stuff, and you don't necessarily get to be like, oh well, I'm fine, so I'm gonna like think that this person is not going through anything at all.
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like even she even said herself, like the emotions that she felt came later. Like she would be sitting
Oh yeah, that
down
makes
and
sense.
her husband would like sit with her and they would just sit there in silence and she would like go
Oh,
through
that's
times
so
where
unfortunate.
she couldn't eat, she didn't want to talk to people,
Oh
like she's dealing with it in her like own ways, and so it's like it was super hard for her, I can tell.
yeah, that's yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, I don't understand what's wrong with people. I will say though, she kind of like started talking about something a little bit different after this, which is she was actually talking about the eulogy part. Um,
Oh yeah, that's a
yeah,
big thing.
exactly. What kind of like was the big issue, right? Is like her and her sister didn't necessarily have the best relationship, especially growing up. It was a lot of fighting, a lot
Oh,
of arguing. It wasn't a super like great relationship. So even when they were older, right? Her husband was actually the one who had to talk to her and be like, "Hey, you should try to like fix this relationship. I understand that you guys didn't have the best relationship when you were growing up, but you should try to fix it." And so, funny enough, towards like her older years, I think it was she said it was around when she hit 19 or 20 years old. She actually she actually started talking to her, going to lunch with her, stuff like that, like bringing
that's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they were actually able to rekindle their relationship to a very
Oh,
like
that's amazing.
healthy.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was like they were able to rekindle it to a very healthy point, and so like even though that the years growing up weren't super great, right? Like they were able to
Yeah.
put that past them and like make a new like
Yeah,
relationship with each
that's
other.
that's really cool that like, not many people get the chance to do that or they forfeit the chance to do that.
Oh, for sure.
And especially knowing what I know now about the whole ending to this story, that's good because there's a lot of people, at least I know and I've seen who've had close family members and friends pass away that they didn't rekindle their relationship with. And a lot of people regret it, and regret it a lot.
Oh, for sure,
So
and like
it's really cool that
understandably.
yeah, it's really cool that Miss Bailey had this chance and took the chance to rekindle that relationship. So also, it's like some people are so not just like petty, but so like self-interested that they don't think it's their problem, so they shouldn't have to fix it. But it's cool that Miss Bailey shows like a large sense of maturity to just say, you know what, it's family, right? You always want to have a good relation with family.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I honestly like, I think, and honestly, I feel like that background knowledge, right, is I think that background knowledge is actually really interesting because she said that when she was like writing the eulogy, right, that when people are always writing eulogies, right, they always want to talk about how great the person was, right? They always want to talk about how fantastic it was. But for the
Hmm.
first, you know, large chunk of her relationship, actually most of the large chunk of her relationship with her sister, was a lot of fighting, a lot of turmoil. So it was very hard for her to just say only great things about her sister, because it would feel like a lie, like it wasn't real.
Oh yeah, that's hard.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, because, not everybody's an angel, but,
Yeah.
especially going through all of that, you definitely don't want to be the person who, like, at a eulogy says something that's off topic. And I can get how the pressure of going in between wanting to speak your own truth and tell your own story, and as well as this other person's story and how you fit in, right? Because, I mean, you're giving the eulogy, you have to kind of insert a little bit of your personal interaction with them in there. And you don't want to necessarily well, you don't want to lie about it. I think that's just stupid, but
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
it's it's pretty cool that, well, it's interesting. Some people are either so self like indulged that they don't really necessarily care about the after effects of what they say during one of these very important times and speeches, and then some people who censor themselves too much and completely just lie up in front of a group of people, and both have the different benefits and of course effects, especially harmful effects. But it's cool that Miss Bailey took the time to generally like weigh those and actually make a decision on it, or it seems made a decision on it, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah. And like she was telling us, like obviously she's gonna talk about the good, but she's also gonna talk about the bad. Like
Yeah,
it's the most honesty that she could give to the relationship.
it's only fair.
She could talk about the bad, but she could also light it up with the good, because there wasn't only bad parts of the relationship. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah, and so she was actually grateful for her husband to actually like allow her to rekindle this relationship, but also while other people were very judgmental of the way that she had reacted to it, he was very understanding and kind, which was
That's good.
awesome.
That's a show of like a good partner that you want to have near you, someone who's understanding of the way you react and someone who kind of gets the way you interact with certain issues, especially emotional issues and trauma and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, and like honestly, the reason why they had the rough example is because obviously her sister is getting a lot of attention from the fact that she has these epileptic seizures, and so it could feel like, as somebody who's like a sibling to that, you could feel almost invisible, like people don't care as much about you. So like understandably, you guys can have a rough childhood from fighting and stuff, but she was able to rekindle it. And what was nice is actually, so even after the eulogy of when it's like happening, right, she's able to tell her kids, and she's able to tell family members who didn't actually get to meet Aunt Kathy about Aunt Kathy, because interestingly enough, after her death and like years later, they're actually asking a lot of questions about Aunt Kathy, because you
That's
know
good.
I mean
Yeah.
they didn't get to meet her respectively.
Yeah.
So you know
That's a good thing. I
yeah.
think that's a good thing.
And it it all kind of sums up very interesting that like I think like a big takeaway from this is like you shouldn't judge people, right? Everybody has different reactions. You shouldn't judge people based off of their reactions to a scenario, but rather you should
Oh
try to
yeah.
help in any way that you can to said relationship, right? So with her sister, they were able to rekindle their relationship. She died suddenly. She gave as much like honesty to the eulogy as possible, and really reminisced about the times with her sister, and she loves her sister. But I really just, it really hurts when you hear about like how people treat other people based off of the
Yeah.
reactions that they have to something like this, when
Yeah,
everybody reacts differently.
it's definitely it's an interesting lesson on just how society sometimes takes people who react differently and it kind of puts them in a box. I mean, it's a good story of one, of course, showing the importance of the general like understanding of family and connectiveness, and also showing the importance of, you know what, you should have your own way to have to cope with issues, and finding your own way to do all of that is super important.
Oh, 100%. I certainly agree with you on that part. But yeah, honestly, after hearing the story and after hearing what happened, like, do you have any questions, any closing statements, anything like interesting about it?
Oh, I think I got a good gist of everything. It's honestly just it's a really, well, of course it's a really saddening story, but it's also something that can obviously give people listening one, a new perspective on some of their current situations, and two, a general life lesson. I mean, that's the reason we listen to people's stories, right? We want to take what they've learned and take what they've gone through, the experiences and the knowledge, and work it towards making our own life better and more beneficial for ourselves, our family, our friends, and, generally society. So, as much as it's a very heartbreaking story and it's saddening, it also gives a little bit of light to show that, what, even if you have a bad relationship with a sibling or a family member, right? Try to pair up that relationship because really life is valuable. You don't know when or where you might see this next person or if you'll see this next person soon. So, I think it's a great story that's both heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. I think that's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah. Honestly, that was a really nice way of putting it, Troy. Well, I appreciate you for coming on here
Yeah,
and chilling with everything. And I honestly I hope you enjoyed it.
yeah, it definitely did.
All right. I'll see you guys next time.